Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video because I'm going to be talking about my top YA fantasy recommendations. You guys, these are some of my favorite books and I'm so excited to share them with you today. Yeah, so let's jump right in. So the first book I'm going to be talking about today is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I hope I'm saying that right. And this is a cult classic. This is just the epitome of YA fantasy. It's so good. Children of Blood and Bone is the first book in the Legacy of Orisha series, and it's actually the author's debut novel, which I think is really impressive because it's so good. It's such a strong book, and the fact that it's her first book I think just speaks volumes about the talent of the author. So Children of Blood and Bone is a YA fantasy that was inspired by West African mythology, which is just really cool. When I first heard that about this book, it piqued my interest right away and I was super interested to hear more about it. And before I get into a summary of the book, if you are a fan of Harry Potter or if you love the the children's TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender, you will like this book. The similarities between that show and this book are a little bit obvious, but in the best ways possible, in a way where when you read it you're like, oh my god, I'm getting major Avatar vibes, and it's exciting and it's fun. It's reminds me of when I was a child watching that, and I just love this book. So in Children of Blood and Bone, we follow our main character, Zele, and we basically follow her journey of trying to restore magic to the kingdom of Orisha. In this kingdom, there's two kind of classes of people, the Kosidans and the Magi. I hope I'm saying it right. Apologies if I mispronounce anything, but so we have our two classes of people, and the Kosidans have no magical abilities, and they're kind of the ruling class, and they rule over the Magi, who have the ability to perform magic, but they actually can't tap into their magical abilities because magic is basically blocked right now. And the Kosidans are using that to their advantage, and they're basically treating the Magi like slaves. They see the Magis as basically less than them, they're not as good, and the Magis are marked, they have white hair. As you can see in the book right here, she's got a full head of white hair, and that marks her as a Magi. And because of that, the Kosidans can kind of see, oh, this person has white hair, they're Magi, they're less than us. So why do I like this book aside from the obvious? I love the exploration of oppression and racism and slavery in this book. I think she does such a good job weaving it into the story, and how just kind of scary it is that it's so relatable to real life. In this book, all of our characters are of African descent. They all have, beautiful, rich, deep skin. And so it's not really, the typical racism based off of, race. It's the kind of magical racism where the people who have magical abilities are seen as less, as they're not human, they're not as good as the Kosidans. And I just think that it's done in a beautiful way where it's not kind of aggressively in your face, but it just makes you realize the problems in this world are so similar to the problems in our world, and I just love it. I think it's beautifully done. I also love this book because you really get to watch Zele kind of come into her own. She's such a strong female lead. She's kind of knocked down her entire life. She's told she's not as good as everyone else, she's less than them, but she doesn't let that, stop her from trying to be better. And when she's kind of given this opportunity to restore magic, she takes it right away, and she wants to go out there because on this journey she's not just kind of fighting to get magic back, she's fighting for her survival. And as a girl she had to watch her mom die, and I think she's just such an inspiration to girls everywhere, honestly. Also, just to call Avatar back a little bit here, but in this book, Zele and her friends kind of go on this journey across the kingdom, and you get to see all these different places, on their way to kind of accomplish their mission. Super similar to book one of Avatar when Aang, Sokka, and Katara are traveling kind of on their way to the Northern Water Tribe, and they're stopping at all these different places, and you kind of get to see the world. And I just love it. I love learning more about the world, learning more about the characters, and kind of just watching this journey and watching them grow. The next book or books that I want to talk about is Dark Shores and Dark Skies by Danielle Jensen. And I put these two together because Danielle Jensen says that they're kind of both the first book of the series. You can read this one first, or you could read the other one first. It doesn't matter. They happen side by side, and they both lead up to the third book, which I just think is really interesting and a little bit different. But yeah, I highly recommend both. Some of the things I love about both these books is the adventure, the friendship, the family, the love, the romance. You know, there's enemies to lovers, there's kind of like this forbidden romance, there's gods, there's magic, there's kind of everything that you could want from a fantasy series. But the way Danielle Jensen kind of puts everything together in a way that really makes sense and it's easily digestible, I just think she does a really good job of it. So just to give a brief summary of each book in case you're interested in reading them, in Dark Shores we follow one of our main characters, Tahereh, and she is one of the Marin. The Marin are I guess, water people you could call them, and they are sailors, and they sail back and forth from the east to the west across the endless sea. Basically, the only rule that they have is that the east and the west must never meet. They can't tell the east about the west, they can't tell the west about the east, and they can't bring people from shore to shore. They're the only ones that can travel back and forth. However, when Tahereh's best friend Lydia is kind of forced into this really dangerous marriage with a bad man, Tahereh breaks that rule and tells Lydia to help her hopefully escape, and by doing so she kind of puts her people at jeopardy, and it does come to kind of bite her in the ass later in the book. Our other main character in Dark Shores is Marcus, and he is a soldier. He is the commander of the 37th Legion, and he also has a secret that nobody else knows. I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to spoil it, but basically what happens is the villain of our story finds out about Tahereh's secret, Marcus's secret, and uses those secrets against them to kind of force them to do his bidding. And what he wants is basically just more power. So he forces them to work together, cross the endless sea, and try to basically win that land for him. And a majority of the book is their trip across the endless sea, and you know, here kind of starts their relationship, if you will. And it's definitely not one of those easy love stories, that's for sure. And on the other side, we have Dark Skies, and that focuses on Lydia, who is the friend that Tahereh helped to save in Dark Shore, and her counterpart, Killian. So in order to escape her bad marriage, Lydia does end up traveling across the endless sea, where she runs into Killian, who is a soldier sworn to the kind of like princess of the land there. And when Lydia and Killian meet, they basically kind of strike this deal that on the surface seems mutually beneficial. They both kind of get what they want out of it. But then, you know, feelings come into play, and outside kind of like evil forces come in, and basically everything goes to shit. So that's a brief summary of the first two books, and I am so excited for the third book to come out. So why do I love this series? Honestly, what's not to like about it? That's like the worst answer ever, but it's just really good. It's got adventure, it's got love, and something that I really enjoy about this series specifically is it's not just romantical love. It has that too, which is great, and I love that, but it also has kind of love of a friend, you know, the value of friendship and kind of acting selflessly to save the ones you love. And then it also has the love of family. I didn't really go into that in the summary, but a lot of the characters are doing things that hurt themselves in order to help their family, and it just really makes you just really deeply connect to the characters and really want to see them succeed, even though they're kind of hitting a lot of turbulence along the way. So if I had to pick which book I like better, I would say that I like Dark Skies better, but I highly recommend both. You decide which one you want to start with, and they're both really good. So for my next recommendation, I kind of cheated a little bit, and I'm going to say The Shadowhunters World by Cassandra Clare. So this isn't exactly a book recommendation considering there's like 12 books in this world, but honestly, if you are a YA fantasy fan, you need to read The Shadowhunters World. The books are so good. So I'm going to briefly touch upon each series in this video, but I'm not going to go too into detail because we'll be here all day. And I'm going to talk about them in the order that they were written, not in chronological order. I personally read them in the order they were written, and that is, I guess, how I would recommend you to read them. I think that that will just be the most enjoyable reading experience. And the reason I say that is because I find at least that Cassandra Clare's first series isn't as strong as her later series. So I think that if you were to read them in chronological order and you were to get to the Mortal Instruments series, which is the third series in chronological order, and the writing dips a little bit, I think you'd be like, why does this feel a little bit weaker? Where if you start with that, it only kind of goes up from there. Okay, so to quickly go through each series, we start with the Mortal Instruments series, which takes place in contemporary New York City, and we follow our main character, Clare, and her kind of group of friends, which includes Jace, Simon, Isabel, Alec, Magnus, you know, the whole gang, and they basically have to save the Shadowhunter world, kind of say it as succinct as possible. So this is not my favorite series in the Shadowhunters world. It's actually probably my least favorite, but I think it's because of kind of what I said before. It's, you know, she wrote these books years ago at this point. She wasn't as strong as she is now, and I think that it's not because it's bad. It's a great series. It's not bad at all. I think the other ones just get better and better. That, you know, how could the first one be my favorite? Also, there is a movie and a TV show based off the Mortal Instruments series. The movie was not that great, but the TV show was pretty good. Watch them if you want, I guess, but definitely read the series. The second series is the Infernal Devices series, and this is my personal favorite series of the whole world. This series takes place in 1800s England, and we follow our main character, Tessa Gray, where she travels to England to find her missing brother. And when she gets there, she finds out that she's kind of part of this Shadowhunters world that she never knew existed before. So this is my favorite series of the Shadowhunters world because the love triangle in this book just hits me in my soul. It's so good. It's one of my favorite love triangles I've ever read. It's just, I don't know how Cassandra Clare did it, but she does it in a way where you just genuinely can't pick one person over the other. You genuinely want them both to win, but you know that's not possible. It's not going to happen. And you're just like, you want to know what ends up happening, but you also kind of don't, because you don't want to like feel the heartbreak of the person that doesn't kind of like get the girl. I just like was so invested in this love triangle that it's just so good. I also really like Tessa as the female protagonist. I think she's a really good like female lead. I think she has kind of like the perfect balance of being like strong and brave and all of those qualities, while also being kind of like tender and loving and supportive, but never being like a pushover and letting anyone take advantage of her. I just really like her as a female lead. Then the next series is the Dark Artifices series, which takes place in contemporary LA. It actually takes place about 5 years after the original Mortal Instruments series. And this series is very much a forbidden love series. We have our two main characters, Emma and Julian, and they are parabatai. If you're not familiar with the Shadowhunters world, that basically means they are kind of like partners in crime, partners in battle. They are kind of like magically connected to help enhance their Shadowhunter abilities. And it is against the law for parabatai to be romantically involved because parabatai that do fall in love basically get like the parabatai curse, where they kind of like basically go crazy. So Emma and Julian, they became parabatai at a really young age before they really were interested in, you know, a romantic relationship. And now that they're kind of older and finding themselves attracted to each other, they're kind of like we can't because it's against the law and we don't want to go crazy and all of this stuff, but they also can't kind of turn off the way they feel about each other. Also, something I really like about this book is the overlap with the original Mortal Instruments series. So as I said, it takes place about 5 years after, and the characters from the original Mortal Instruments series do come into this series, which I just like. I think it just helps to build the world as a whole instead of just looking at these series as individual entities. Okay, and our last series in the Shadowhunters world is the Last Hour series, and only the first book of this series is actually out. The rest of the books aren't available yet. And this book, we actually go back in time again to 1903, I believe, in England, so about 20 years after the Infernal Devices series. Those characters are kind of a little bit older now, and it's without giving too much away, the Last Hour series focuses on the kids of the main characters in the Infernal Devices series. So as I said, I've only read book 1 because that's the only one that's out, but I did really like it, and I'm excited to kind of continue with this story with this kind of new set of characters. In this story, we follow our main character Cordelia, and she is like this tough, badass shadow hunter. She is very good at hunting demons. However, she's not so good at telling the boy she likes how she feels. So I kind of love that it's like she's so strong and brave and all of that, but then when it comes to this boy, she's like so scared and so timid, and it's like so cute, and you know, and I can definitely relate to that. So why do I love the Shadowhunters world? I just love that there are so many series in this world. It really just makes this world so much bigger, feel so much realer, and you can really invest in it because there are so many different stories. And I love that there's so much overlap between the series. It kind of just like feeds that need to like want to know more about your favorite characters, if that makes sense. Also, I think that Cassandra Clare does a really good job of not getting repetitive in her series. I think even though there is a lot of similarities, you know, shadow hunters, demons, warlocks, all of that, each story is very unique, and it doesn't ever feel like, oh, been there, done that. You know, she's just repeating books at this point. Also, the romance, the love in all of these series is definitely A1. It's so good. Cassandra Clare is really good at kind of like building that sexual tension between characters and really getting you to buy into relationships. It doesn't ever feel like rushed, like instant love that I hate, that I've talked about a million times, but I just hate it. And I don't think any of these books have that, which I just really appreciate. And I feel like she doesn't kind of take the easy way out of just doing that. She, you know, builds these relationships that feel real, that feel really like the characters are genuinely in love. And I just think that makes it really enjoyable to read. So yeah, I highly recommend all the Shadowhunters World series, and again, I would read it in the order they were written, but I think you could also read it in chronological order and you would still be really enjoyable. Okay, so my last 2 books I'm going to be calling like honorable mention because I do really like them, but I don't love them as much as the previous books I talked about. I'm not like as obsessed with them. I don't need them as much, kind of, if that makes sense. So the first series I want to talk about here is the Lux series by JLA. I've talked about this in previous videos, so if you want a longer summary, I'll link to that down below. But just to give you a quick summary in case you're thinking about reading it, it is a contemporary YA fantasy that takes place in, I believe, West Virginia, and it has action, it has aliens, it has enemies to lovers romance, and it's a really good series. If you're a fan of Twilight, you will like this book, and dare I say it, I think it is a better Twilight. And that hurts me to say because I am such a diehard Twilight fan, but I think it is just objectively better. I think Twilight's really good because I read it when I was younger and it kind of, you know, holds a place in my heart, but I think this series is just slightly stronger and just better. Okay, and lastly, I want to talk about the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. I put this in here even though I kind of have mixed feelings about this series. I love the first 3 books, which is why I put it on this list, and I highly recommend the first 3. You're missing out if you don't read the first 3. However, after that, it does kind of start to go downhill, which, you know, is unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. Shatter Me takes place in this kind of apocalyptic world where we follow our main character Juliet, who kind of has these kind of like unfortunate magical powers where if you touch her you die, which has made Juliet's life really hard growing up. She basically couldn't have anyone close to her because she was a danger to everyone around her, which basically made her live this really sad kind of lonely life. Fast forward a little bit, the premise of the Shatter Me series is basically Juliet trying to take down the reestablishment, which is this kind of corrupt government that's taken over, and they are kind of like experimenting on people like Juliet who kind of have these magical abilities, and she's like, that's wrong, this is not okay. You know, no one else is doing anything about it, so I will. So yeah, I think that in the first few books, Juliet's character is really interesting, and there's really interesting romance, and the world is really different. I don't really read a lot of like apocalyptic fantasy, so I thought this was really interesting, but towards the end I kind of felt like the author kind of ran out of things to talk about, kind of ran out of new ideas. However, kind of with that being said, I still did put this book on my top YA fantasy recommendations, because I do think the first 3 books are really strong and I do highly recommend them. And if you're one of those people that can just stop mid-series and just say, okay, you know, that was enjoyable, I liked it, and kind of leave it at that, I personally can't do that. I had to finish it out just to kind of know how it ended, and you know, it did kind of fall flat towards the end, but it is really good and I do recommend it. But yeah, so those are all the books I have today. I hope you guys liked this video. Please let me know in the comments below if you end up picking up any of these books, and if you liked them. I hope you do. They're some of my favorite books of all time, and yeah, I'm just obsessed with them. But yeah, that's all I have. So please like this video, please subscribe if you aren't already, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Bye!